The Grand Canyon, the iconic landscape of one of America's most cherished natural wonders, lies a vast network of ancient caves, filled with exotic minerals and crystals. And not just any crystals. These are some of the largest and most pristine gypsum crystals ever found on Earth, some as long as 36 feet, and estimated to be over 500,000 years old, of the Grand Canyon. It's a thrilling time for science and exploration, and the Grand Canyon is leading the charge in uncovering some of the world's most incredible secrets. The development of the igneous and metamorphic rocks that make up the inner gorge marks the beginning of this narrative, which takes place almost 2 billion years ago. On top of these ancient rocks are many layers upon layers of sedimentary rock. Each of these layers reveals a different facet of the natural history of the area around the Grand Canyon. The entire region was then lifted as a result of the activity of plate tectonics between 70 and 30 million years ago, which led to the formation of the high and relatively flat Colorado Plateau as a result. Finally, sometime between 5 and 6 million years ago, the Colorado River started to make its way southward through the landscape. The canyon was widened as a result of continued erosion caused by tributary streams. Even in modern times, these natural processes are still at work, gradually enlarging and cutting deeper into the Grand Canyon. Rock deposition. The history of the Grand Canyon begins with the formation of the numerous layers of rock that the canyon runs through. These layers were laid down as the canyon was being formed. When igneous and metamorphic rock first began to form approximately 2 billion years ago, this is where our tale begins. After that, layer upon layer of sedimentary rocks was piled above these basement rocks until the mountain range was complete. Geologists make use of a diagram that is known as a stratigraphic column in order to examine the strata of rock. It displays the rock layers with the oldest layer displayed at the bottom and the newest layer displayed at the top. This indicates that the layer at the bottom was the first to form and that each succeeding layer was produced at a later time, with the youngest rocks being at the top. This concept is known as the principle of superposition in geology. It states that rocks that are located higher up are often younger than rocks that are located lower down. The principle of original horizontality is yet another essential principle. This indicates that each layer of rock was laid down in a horizontal fashion. The rock strata that give the impression of being tilted are likely the result of a geologic process that took place after the rocks were initially deposited. Colorado Plateau Uplift. At the Grand Canyon, the layer of rock that is the highest up is called the Kaibab limestone, and it was produced at the bottom of the ocean. To this day, however, the Kaibab limestone can be discovered at elevations as high as 9,000 feet at the very peak of the Colorado Plateau. How did these seafloor rocks acquire such high elevations? The final development of the Grand Canyon was facilitated in large part by the lifting of the Colorado Plateau. Plate tectonics activity resulted in the elevation and flattening of the rock, which led to the formation of a plateau that the Colorado River was able to cut through. It's not clear how the Colorado Plateau got that high in the first place, but it definitely did. Rock deformation is something that geologists typically anticipate finding in conjunction with uplift. For example, during the process of the Rocky Mountains uplift, the rocks that make up the mountains were subjected to significant crushing and deformation. On the Colorado Plateau, the rocks were not considerably transformed. Rather, they were brought to a higher elevation and flattened down. Investigations are currently taking place to determine how and why the uplift occurred in this manner. Some possibilities have been put forward by scientists, even though they do not know for certain what caused the elevation of the Colorado Plateau. The two hypotheses that are currently receiving the most support are the shallow angle subduction hypothesis and the ongoing uplift through the isostasy hypothesis. According to observations made by researchers, the angle of subduction has a direct influence on the topography of the South American continent. Active volcanoes tend to form in areas where normal angle subduction is taking place. There are no active volcanoes in areas where shallow angle subduction is taking place. Instead, pieces of crust are raised along faults that run in the opposite direction. Along with reversing faults in North America, it is believed that the Rocky Mountains and the Colorado Plateau both experience similar uplifting at the same time. Plate tectonics, and most likely an episode of mountain building known as the Laramide orogeny, come first in the history of uplift, which begins with plate tectonics. During the Mesozoic era, around 70 million years ago, the Laramide orogeny got its start, and it continued on until approximately 40 million years ago during the Cenozoic era. Some researchers believe that during this time period, there was a shift in the way that the Farallon Plate, which is located on the western edge of North America, was subducted. The Farallon Plate is most likely subducted at a shallower angle and at a faster rate than is typical. This is in contrast to the typical steep subduction angle. Because of the shallow angle of the subduction, the deformation was able to migrate around 625 miles further inward from the plate boundary. These two plates were subjected to a significant amount of compression in an east-west direction, which resulted in the elevation of the Rocky Mountains and the Colorado Plateau. We may see an example of subduction at a shallow angle taking place in our contemporary day along the western edge of South America. There, a break may be seen in the Nazca Plate. While some of the plates is subducting at an angle that is considered normal, other portions of it are subducting at an angle that is considered shallow. Whether or not the Colorado Plateau achieved an overall high elevation near the end of the Laramide orogeny isn't certain. Some researchers in the scientific community are of the opinion that the Colorado Plateau continued to be lifted during the Middle and Late Cenozoic. If what has been stated here is accurate, then the ongoing ascent can be partially attributed to the isostatic rebound. Experimenting a little bit could be beneficial in gaining an understanding of the isostatic rebound. While you push back as hard as you possibly can, a companion should hold your arms tightly against your side so that you are not moving. Maintain this position for about a minute and a half before releasing your push. Request that your friend leave go of you. Once the pressure was taken off of your arms, what did you notice happen to them? Did they have the sensation of being light and airy, as though they wanted to go away from your sides? The crust of the Earth reacts in a similar fashion. The crust will begin to rise when considerable amounts of material are lost as a result of erosion. The term isostatic rebound refers to the process through which the crust rises after the release of pressure. What is the Grand Canyon and Colorado River's period span? Unlike rock formations, landscapes are harder to place a date on. However, scientists can get a fairly accurate age estimate for landscapes by analyzing the connections between different types of rock formations. Scientists have utilized this type of relative dating approach to narrow the age of the Colorado River and Grand Canyon. Scientists agree that the Colorado River was responsible for creating the Grand Canyon. Therefore, the river predates the canyon by a short amount of time, though they are both very ancient. Geologists have analyzed rocks found along the modern-day Colorado River's path. Scientists can tell if rocks were deposited by a river by analyzing the types of sediments present. River rocks are younger than the river itself because the river had to be present for the rock to be deposited. It seems to reason that rocks that were not deposited by a river must be older than the river itself. Scientists attempt to put a date on these rock formations whenever they can. The age of the river falls between the rocks considered to be older than the river and those determined to be younger. Using this technique, researchers have determined that the river and the canyon it flows through are between 5 and 6 million years old. Newly discovered fossil footprints from Grand Canyon. An interdisciplinary group of paleontologists from all around the world have banded together to investigate some significant fossil footprints that were just recently found in a remote area of the Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona. Trackways of primitive tetrapods, animals with 4 limbs, that lived in an ancient desert habitat have been found within a big sandstone boulder that has been extremely well preserved. These fossilized footprints have been dated to almost the beginning of the Permian period, which is 280 million years ago. This means that they existed before the first dinosaurs appeared on the scene. The first scientific study reporting fossil tracks from the Grand Canyon was published in 1918, just 1 year prior to the park being founded as a section of the National Park Service. The article was written by a team of researchers from the United States and Great Britain. 100 years later, during the centennial celebration for Grand Canyon National Park, new research on ancient footprints from the park is being presented in a scientific publication released this week. Dr. Heitor Franceschini, a Brazilian paleontologist who works at the Laboratory of Vertebrate Paleontology at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, is the principal author of the new paper. He collaborated on the study with experts from Germany and the United States. In 2017, Franceschini and Dr. Spencer Lucas, curator of paleontology at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science in Albuquerque, New Mexico, made their first trip to the Grand Canyon fossil track locality. They were accompanied by a team of researchers. The paleontologists immediately recognized that the fossil tracks were made by a long extinct relative of very early reptiles because they were similar to tracks known from Europe and referred to as Ichthyotherium. This is the first occurrence of Ichthyotherium from the Coconino Sandstone and from a desert environment, and it was discovered recently at the Grand Canyon. In addition to this, the geological age of these fossil tracks makes them the youngest example of this particular type of fossil track ever found anywhere in the world. Ichthyotherium is a type of footprint that paleontologists believe was left behind by a mysterious group of extinct tetrapods known as the diadectomorphs. The diadectomorphs were an ancient group of tetrapods that had traits with both frogs and reptiles. They came from the time when reptiles and amphibians diverged. In the field of vertebrate paleontology, important and unsolved problems concerning the evolutionary relationships of diadectomorphs as well as their paleobiology have persisted for a very long time. Even if it's possible that the actual animal that left the footprints in the Grand Canyon may never be identified with absolute certainty, the trackways in the Grand Canyon do document the journey of an extremely ancient terrestrial species. The characteristics that can be measured in the tracks and trackways point to an ancient animal that had massive bodies but short legs. The creature walked on all four of its legs and had 5 finger-like digits on each foot, none of which had claws. The geological formation in which the newly discovered fossil tracks from the Grand Canyon were found to be preserved is another noteworthy feature of the traces. The Coconino Sandstone is an Aeolian, wind-formed rock formation that displays cross-bedding and other sedimentary features that indicate it was deposited in a desert or dune environment. These features indicate that the environment of deposition was a desert or dune. Therefore, the existence of ichnotherium in the Coconino Sandstone represents the oldest evidence of diadectomorphs living in an arid desert environment. These new fossil tracks discovered in Grand Canyon National Park provide important information about the paleobiology of the diadectomorphs, said Franceschini, who led the expedition that unearthed the tracks. It was presumed that the diadectomorphs did not possess the typical adaptations necessary to survive in an environment that lacked access to any form of liquid water, so it was not anticipated they would be able to survive in a desert setting. There is a class of animals known as Amniota, which is comprised of extinct reptiles, birds, and mammals. However, diadectomorphs are not a member of this group. In addition, Lucas mentions that paleontologists have long thought that only amniotes could live in the dry and harsh Permian deserts. This discovery shows that tetrapods other than reptiles were living in those deserts, and, surprisingly, were already adapted to life in an environment of limited water. In 2019, in recognition of the Grand Canyon National Park Centennial, the National Park Service is undertaking a comprehensive paleontological resource inventory for the park. In the words of Vincent Santucci, a senior paleontologist with the National Park Service, a distinguished team of specialists in geology and paleontology will participate in fieldwork and research to help expand our understanding of the rich fossil record preserved at Grand Canyon National Park. That's all for the video today. We will be right back with more. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.